11:47, and we were finally getting some crafting time in today. I've only got like 2 or 3 rows in on my pumpkin, which is not a lot at all. But it's been very busy just doing weekly chores and taking care of my mother-in-law. I probably am over there about 4 hours during the day, every day when they're working, and then the time it takes to cook dinner for everybody and clean up. I think a lot of people have this impression that people who are stay-at-home have all this free time. The majority of us do not, especially for a homeschool mom. Like, I do a lot of one-on-one with my kids, even though most of their schoolwork is online. We sit down at the end of the day and grade, and that's usually 2 to 3 hours when we do that. Sometimes we kind of put it off because I have so much other adulting I have to do, and then we just do like bulk grading if there's no test. But yeah, there's not that much actual crafting time for me daily, except for what I can squeeze in. And that's why it's not uncommon to see me actually knitting on something in line at Walmart, because I have to get my rows in when I can. But I wanted to show you my winding setup. I actually brought it out here, and we're gonna wind all that yarn that I showed in yesterday's reveal of my West Knits shawl. And it's just a glorious day, and it's too pretty and not to be outside. So we are outside. I brought the whole winding thing outside. So I'm gonna turn around the camera and I'm gonna talk about my setup and why I love it. And then we're gonna talk about something else as we actually wind the yarn up. This is actually a trestle from IKEA. It is used to hold a table. You would get another one of these and you would set the table platform on top, and you can adjust it to be a bar height or a table height. I have this little black clip. I saved all of these from my diaper bags when my kids were young, and my kids are now 12 and 16, but I use them everywhere. So I have this one here, and it holds my scissors, and it holds my Acre Works stitch gauge, which those things are awesome. I'll link it down below. I'm not affiliated with them, but they're just amazing. And my scissors here, everyone knows not to touch them or I will come for them. Then I have my Stanwood 10 ounce. This is a metal winder. I bought this thing in 2013-14 and it still works perfectly to this day. However, I've somehow misplaced my little washer, so occasionally this bar likes to roll around, and I've been meaning just to attach it to this, and I just keep forgetting to. So I have to hold it when I'm winding. Every now and then I do put some WD-40 in there to keep mine spinning nice and wonderfully. And on this side, I have my Stanwood Umbrella Swift. It's called Umbrella Swift because it opens just like an umbrella. There are floor or table Swifts. They're called Amish Swifts, I think, and there's even some you can hang on the wall. But I like this one. When I originally had this set up, I had it in a different place. This I used to have on my desk in my craft room, and I had to modify it a bit. You can see where I did that to make it fit over that. And so I can still tighten this if I wanted to, but I just screwed it in to my trestle because it's not going to go anywhere, and I don't plan on using my trestle for anything else. This is just a boon mic arm holder. It has nothing to do with spinning. It's just there because usually I sit on the floor and I have my mic coming over me. As far as care for this, I've had this just as long as I've had my winder, and occasionally I will stick some olive oil in these little things so it slides, but you can just get a crayon, and you can see where I've done that in the past with a white crayon or a clear crayon or a glitter crayon, and just color this, and it puts a little bit of that slickness on there, and it makes it have a very smooth spin that doesn't make any noise. So that is one of my tricks. So we're gonna be winding all of these, which is roughly 2,000 yards. So I figured we would use this as a learning moment. Also, we're gonna use this time to do a little Q&A and talk about something I think would be fun to do for Vlogtober. So way back at the dawn of the channel, I put up this little post video, and this video talks about if you have any questions for me that you want to ask me as a content creator or a channel, whatever you want to call me, a crafter, then leave them down below. And I did not forget about those. I know people thought maybe I did forget about those, but I had been letting those stew for the opportunistic time, and I think this is that time. So I brought some of them out with me. There was only a few on that post because my channel was like a baby at that time. And we're gonna kind of talk about these as we go through Vlogtober. And I would love to hear your answers as well. I think that makes it more of a interactive chit chat among fellow yarn loving friends. The first one, we'll just start with the first question that was asked to me, and that was from Linda Simpson Designs. And her question was, if you could choose anywhere in the world to visit, where would that place be and why? So I have been very lucky that I have got to travel the world some. I haven't got to travel a lot, but I did get to travel some when I was younger. And I got to travel France for about a month when I was a junior in high school. I grew up in a small town, and my school only offered one foreign language, and that was French. I traveled all around southern France. We went to places like the Chambord. We traveled into Paris and went to the Louvre, and we ate at the Hippopotamus, which was one of my favorite restaurants in the whole wide world. We went up the Eiffel Tower, and there was some kind of restaurant, I can't remember the name of it, but it's set pretty much equal height as the Eiffel Tower. So you sit it there and you have your dinner, and you get to watch the Eiffel Tower all lit up at night. Like, truly amazing. However, you had to dress in formal attire, and it was a very expensive meal, but it was very worth it. And they brought out this chocolate mousse to you to eat, and it was divine, like absolutely divine. And that was, I think, my first time ever really eating a rare steak. And now I always eat rare steaks. So I guess it was a pivotal moment in my meat eating life. Apologize to those who are not meat eaters. It was just a great experience. We got to go to Normandy Beach, which was very surreal. I brought back a little bit of the sand. We were told we could at that time. Again, it's like over 20 something years ago. It's been a while. I'm sure things have changed now. And we got to go into the bunkers and stuff, and it was a very heavy atmosphere. I don't know that I've ever felt so much emotion in one place as I did that day that we were traveling there. We got to go through all of these huge castles. There was this one that had a wax museum, and I can't think of the name, and I'll put it down below if I can think of it. But it had this room that was completely painted black. Something about the lady was in mourning, but it was just really crazy to see this very elaborate estate room with this huge bed, and it's just like super black and dark. The wax museum was pretty freaky. I don't think I got very much photos or video from that. I don't think we could, really. We stayed in various little hotels. All the amazing little bakery shops were super amazing. If I had to choose, I would go back to Europe. I don't know if I would go back to France. I kind of want to, because I want to see Notre Dame again. I got to go and go through it, all the places through it. It was just a gorgeous cathedral. And then watching it burn on TV a couple of years ago, like, I bawled. I cried like a baby. Like, it was just devastating, even to me. And I cannot even imagine what it would have been like seeing that, living in France, and, you know, growing up with that down the street. So I would love to go see that again and see how the restoration is going. But I really want to go to Austria, where is my mother-in-law is from. She's from Austria, Germany. She's from a little town close to Salzburg, I think is what it's called. But I would love to know, you know, where would you travel? If you can go anywhere in the world, where would you go? I thought we'd take this opportunity to talk about yarn winding, because I know sometimes if you're new to Hanks, you may not know what to do. Or you may have tried before and had epic failures, and we don't want yarn winding catastrophes. We don't want any yarn hurt in the process of winding, or our sanity. So I'm going to show you what I do when I wind yarn, and my best practices, I guess you can say, for yarn winding. The first one would be, if all possible, get a Swift and a yarn winder. You can use the back of a chair, but if you have cats, that can be very hazardous. The first thing we want to do is prepare our skein of yarn. We're going to do that by popping off our tag. Miss Babs used staples in hers, so I always make sure I pull those out so they don't attach to my yarn and snag my yarn. So we're just going to slide it out. And now we're going to open up our skein of yarn. So you will notice there is a tie on your yarn. You do not want to untie that yet. I like to give my yarn a good shake. It helps the fibers to kind of loosen up so they're not holding on to each other. And I like to go through and make sure there are none that are actually twisted. Now, these ties, you do not want to cut to the last moment, because if you cut this too early, you are going to have a nightmare on your hands. So while leaving that tied, we're going to wrap it around our Swift, and we're going to hold it as we open up our Swift. Then we want to get our little latch and tighten it. So now that we have this on here, we are going to kind of make sure all of these are going in the right direction. And now we're going to find our tie. So when Miss Bab ties hers, she actually uses the beginning end and the ending end of the yarn to make the tie. Some yarn companies will use scrap yarn, but if I just go and cut this right here, I'm actually going to be cutting a decent amount of yarn. So you do not want to do that. Even if you know a company uses the ends to tie, you always just want to pull it as far as you can and cut right next to that knot. And then you can pull it out. If it's a piece of extra waste yarn, it's going to come out. But like this is the beginning and the end, so it's just going to kind of hang. You want to make sure that you're pulling from an end that is not wrapped on the other end. So I usually take one in and I'll slowly pull and go all the way around and make sure it's not going to be caught. Once I see that that is the main yarn, I will go ahead and either put it straight into my winder or I'll just let it dangle. Then you want to take the end that is going to be the tail end and kind of tie it out of the way. I just do a little slip knot because you may have to untie that later on. We shall see. So now we're at the process where we put it through our actual winder. This main guide arm is going to be the first one that you use in case you've never used one of these. And then you want to use the bottom one, which is attached to your winder. This is what's going to actually form your cake. And then your winder should have these slits. You want to pull that tail end to the end. What I like to do is when I first go around, I kind of hold this in place and make sure that that's going to stay. Because if you want to use this for a center pull cake, that's going to be your center pull. So you don't want to have yarn barf coming around. And I'll just go around a few times until I make sure it's secure. Then we can start winding. And really, when you're winding yarn, you should really tension your yarn and hold it the whole time, because you're also feeling to make sure that there's no knots in your yarn that you're going to have to encounter and deal with later. You want to have a even, slow tension as you turn and just continue to the very end. So I did get all of my yarn wound. So this is the through hike. My roasted pumpkin had an issue. I've bought Miss Bab's yarn many years, and there was actually a break in my yarn. It wasn't even like a knot. It was like where the yarn separated. I mean, it's not a big deal. It just came unplied. I'm just going to save this in case I need it for just a little bit of a bind off. I'm just going to work from the skein. And if it's done in sections, then I will just use this first if I have to go to another color. So it's not a huge deal. I'm using mine as center pull balls. So that's that. Then we have the Chinese lantern. The C word, I cannot think of the name. Kekako. Yeah. And then the, whatever this one was, Ember Glow. Now that all that is done, I am going to finish my bottle of water because it is warm outside. You can see my face is a little red. It's now closer to 90 degrees out here. But it's still nice because we have always a constant breeze here for whatever reason. I guess because the way our house is in kind of like a valley. And so it's pleasant in the shade, but it's still warm. Like I'm sweaty. I'm glistening. I'm glistening, Bill.
The mountains in Montana, danced in the lights of New Orleans. Portland ran away with me, and San Francisco stayed with me. Nashville made its way in between. Fell in love